with LaneGate right now, you're serving startups, and you mentioned you're serving somewhat of like they're almost an underserved market in terms of banking. What is it that is sort of happening with startups in that regard? How are banks not serving them, and where are you filling the gaps?
It's kind of twofold. So it's banks not really serving them, but it's also, companies in the tech sector and, financial people working for those companies that don't really know how to identify the banks are underserving them. So there's lots of opportunities. It can be as simple as, let's say I'm XYZ Incorporated and I just raised a $30 million, Series A round. And one of my investors has, strongly suggested I open an account with JP Morgan. This is like one anecdote that I see a
Right.
million times a day. JP Morgan doesn't really have a really great, tech coverage group at all. They don't have good relationship managers. They'll kind of stick you with someone who's been out of college for 2 years.
Yes.
They'll give you a bad money market product with high fees and only options to kind of use one of them. They're kind of online portals from the Stone Ages and doesn't integrate well with like modern
Yeah,
tech.
totally.
Let's say you also have like a need to purchase foreign currency because you have a subsidiary in Estonia where your R&D team sits or something like that. Like when you're buying it, JP Morgan's not going to tell you you can just get access to our spot FX currency desk and book trades at market. They're going to say just set up a wire to your Estonian entity and you can do that every month. You need to make payroll. But what they don't tell you is like they're charging 3% on every transaction that goes cross border. They won't tell you that you're under earning by 20 basis points versus other almost identical risk free overnight instruments. They won't tell you that if you need to borrow money in 2 years, they have no balance sheet for a company in your sector. And you won't know any of those things because if you're in tech, chances are you've never worked in a cash management or treasury capacity.
No.
You've worked in
Yeah.
financial planning and analysis, or you've worked in controllership, which is all really important,
Mhm.
particularly FP&A for a startup.
Yep.
But you could be leaving a lot of money on the table. As an example, I was the treasurer of UiPath, huge company, is public, went public in 2021. They hired me not by mistake, but they had a CFO who was kind of not super experienced and had advice that they should hire a treasury person. If I had a kind of a US based CFO who'd come from that traditional FP&A background, they would have been in the mindset that you don't need any treasury help until you're a public company. But what I was able to do in like 2 weeks is find $600,000 in annual savings on FX
Wow.
trades,
Yeah.
reallocate their cash so that they got an incremental $1 million a year in risk-free interest and like
Mhm.
20 other things, just because that's something I know how to do. And yeah, we take that to, tech companies all over the world right now. And there's like 20 other things I could list that are just ways that you could really just low hanging fruit to add a lot of like tangible value.
Found money.
Yep.
Incredible. And I get all of that because I'll just say as a startup, founder, can I take it one step further with a JP Morgan or some, similar ilk is I just don't think they care. It's just you're just such a small part of their business that it's reflected in no knock on the many great people I'm sure that work at those businesses, but it's
Sure.
very clear that so many of them, you described it perfectly. They're like 1 or 2 years out of college. They're still learning, so much. And so they have, names like they have roles that are like advisor, manager, whatever, and they can't really advise you on anything. And that's not a knock on them. Their company is sometimes so big they can't really do anything. I will actually circle back on that. You mentioned that their VCs are telling them to set up that account. Is it because of stability? Is it because of the Silicon Valley
Yeah.
bank
It's a
fiasco?
gu
That's
it's a
why.
definitely a reactionary measure from what
Yes.
happened with SVB,
Okay.
but there are other banks with the same credit rating that JP Morgan has. So, basically what they're saying is, like, move your funds to, a higher credit institution where you're not at risk for, of, like, a run on the bank. So, sure, like, JP Morgan ticks those boxes, but so does HSBC, so does, Fifth Third Bank. There are a lot of single A credit banks that are much better positioned to help you as a startup. And what some of the silver lining about what happened with SVB is there's this huge SVB diaspora at a handful of like 3 or 4 banks where really great relationship people have gone and kind of made their own imprint on these kind of older institutions. That didn't really happen at JP Morgan. It did. A lot of them have left, and I just think that, like, the ticket values of these deals are just too small for them to have, given it the attention that they should have. But you've got like an HSBC has got 75 plus people from SVB and all really great people who understand the credit of a startup. They also have really good money market products. They've got a balance sheet for venture debt. They've got an international footprint. So it's not to say that if you're a startup, moving your money to HSBC is going to solve all your problems, because you're still going to be leaving money on the table if you don't really know what you're doing. But it's certainly a step in the right direction. But yeah, at the end of the day, you should be diversifying like where you keep your cash. There's some really cool tools. Most of them are free. It's just about like knowing how to find them and leveraging them to the best of your ability.
The knowing how to find, I think I can't emphasize that enough. As a founder who's dealt with a lot of these issues, I think that you know, this would be my infomercial for your business. I think that this information is relatively hard to find, hard to make sense of. And having someone like yourself who has, I'm sure, relationships, firsthand working knowledge with a lot of these groups, and then also you're aware of the tools, that's half the battle right there.